Airbus A380, the plane that has often been touted as the king of the skies. Known as the world's largest passenger airliner ever built, it's safe to say it has an amazing reputation. But have you ever wondered how such a colossal aircraft was created? Today at Whole Process, we're about to take a step inside the jet to find out. But first, let's meet the company behind this engineering marvel, Airbus. With its founder companies stretching back as far as the 1910s, Airbus is quite proud of its history. July 10th, 2000. It was on this day that multiple companies like France's Aerospatiale Matra, Germany's DASA, and Spain's CASA merged to form EADS, European Aeronautic Defense and Space Company. Now, if you think that's a lot of acronyms, don't worry, we thought the same. It was this merger that changed the whole European aviation industry. Today, Airbus has positioned itself in the market to be Europe's largest aerospace company, employing a striking 150,000 people across 180-plus sites worldwide. That's not all, though. In 2024, they hit 69 billion euros in revenue. But what truly prompted the creation of the famed A380? Well, to understand this, we need to go back in time to the aviation market in the 90s. Airports at popular hubs like Heathrow had a full capacity for most of their airplane slots and almost zero open slots for any new aircraft. This basically meant that if airlines wanted to increase their passenger numbers, they would have to settle for increasing capacity in their aircraft, especially since using more airplanes was no longer feasible due to the limited slots available. This deeply saturated market shaped the reason why such a huge aircraft was built, to capitalize on the few slots that were available. Airbus saw this and realized that hub-to-hub travel was seriously reigning supreme, and airlines like Emirates were positioning themselves to tap into it. The other factor that made the creation of the A380 so attractive was the savings. Did you know that a single A380 can transport 853 passengers if it is configured as fully economy? The company realized that it offered the most economical method for long-haul flights with the lowest fuel per seat consumption. But this advantage came with a major flaw we'll uncover later, something that led to the eventual discontinuation and grounding of the plane. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The aircraft also happens to be the world's first plane with 2 full-length passenger decks, offering a total area of 5,920 square feet, which, if you have a hard time visualizing, is roughly on par with being as large as 3-hole tennis courts. Which is why, when it came to naming the A380, the approach was different from its predecessors. Instead of following the sequential route, like A300 to A340, they went for the number 8, because it resembled the double-deck cross-section of the plane. After the plans were put on paper, the production of the King of the Skies began. And here is where it really gets crazy. With the staggering use of 4 million parts from 1,500 companies coming from 30 different countries, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that this super jumbo aircraft wasn't easy to bring to life. The multinational effort it takes to build this aircraft is nothing short of spectacular, with its wings being manufactured in Broughton, Wales, and the fuselage sections, which is just a fancy way of saying the main body, getting created in Germany and France. That's not quite all, though. The plane's tail takes its first breaths of life in Spain, with its fellow tail fin also being from Germany. Thinking about all that back and forth has us going dizzy, but it's the truth behind the A380's production. But if you're scratching your head as to how on earth such oversized parts are traveling around the world, here's the insider scoop. To get these parts from all over Europe to reach the final assembly line in Toulouse, there are multiple methods. One of them is the reliable sea transport with ro-ro ships. The company Airbus operated around 3 custom-built roll-on and roll-off ships that were created to haul large pieces of the airplane to the required destinations. These trusty water travelers carry 6 of the main sections of the A380, the 3 fuselage sections, 2 wings, and 1 horizontal tailplane. Considering the sheer size of each part, there has to be some external help to load these onto the ships. And if you guessed cranes, you'd be wrong. There is no crane activity needed. Cazeneuve, The manager in charge of the transportation told CNN Travel, each production plant puts the sections on the transport jig, and a special multi-purpose vehicle goes under the jig to move it. Then the parts are sent on their merry way to ship directly to the Pauillac dock near Bordeaux, France. The second step used is air transport. Yes, the A380 technically gets to fly before its creation, only the vertical fin at least. It flies from Hamburg to Toulouse, and this is achieved through Airbus's very own special Beluga aircraft, officially known as the Airbus Beluga, a 300 to 600 ST super transporter. It's not actually named that for no reason. Rather, it's because it is modified with a giant cargo bay to carry oversized components like that. The Belugas link Airbus facilities all throughout Europe. However, only the A380's tail fin fits inside this method, mainly because the other parts were too big. Once in Pauillac, the sections are each transferred from the ships to designated barges, with these barges traveling up to 95 kilometers up the Garonne River to Langon. As with any groundbreaking project, you'd be interested to hear that this isn't a quick journey. It takes about 4 trips over the course of 8 days to fully transport everything, with special road trailers used to pick up the slack and carry these humongous parts to the final assembly line, situated in a purpose-built facility at Toulouse-Blagnac Airport in southern France, called the Jean-Luc Lagardère plant, a 240-kilometer road trip. Here, thousands of employees work to put together this metal marvel. If you're wondering, how large does a factory have to be to house such an aircraft? The answer will shock you. This particular factory spans 1.3 million square feet. It's inside this massive space that the final assembly takes place. But of course, getting the parts there is a challenge in itself. To make room for the supersized convoy, entire stretches of road had to be widened and even redesigned specifically for the A380, and a specialized route called itinéraire, a grand gabarit, came into being. Roundabouts along the way weren't spared either. Many were rebuilt so the trucks could pass straight through the middle rather than around. In fact, in some towns, bypasses were created just for these transports, permanently reshaping the local infrastructure for the plane's journey. The final journey to Toulouse is like a full-scale convoy. Local residents were even notified 3 days in advance whenever the transport was scheduled. To minimize disruption, the parade of oversized components only moved at night, and for good reason. Imagine being stuck behind a giant airplane tail fin on your morning commute. Not exactly practical. Once the convoy finally arrives, all of the A380's enormous pieces meet their counterparts and are fitted together, revealing the much-awaited silhouette of the world's largest passenger jet. But that doesn't mean it's ready to hit the runway yet. There is one final makeover left: the paint job. Workers get ready to start revamping the outer part of the plane. Still, there are important safety precautions at this stage. The fumes of the paint used are toxic to inhale, and workers wear hazmat suits to protect themselves. Though we have to say, the spraying of the paint itself looks like a very calming job. The A380 is meticulously painted in the company logos and airline colors. After final assembly and a fresh paint job, the A380 was ready to fly. The rest is history. The Airbus A380 graced the skies on its first maiden flight in 2005 at Toulouse-Blagnac Airport in the south of France, marking 2025 as its 20th anniversary since soaring the skies. It then joined Singapore Airlines for its first commercial flight in 2007, starting its exploration of the skies officially as part of their fleet. But building such a massive aircraft wasn't without headaches. One of the biggest problems came down to something most of us never think about: wiring. Each A380 needs more than 500 kilometers of wiring to connect its systems, and here's where things got messy. Airbus teams in Germany and France were using different versions of design software, which meant that when the wiring harnesses arrived, they didn't fit properly inside the fuselage, leading to thousands of hours of rework, delays stretching over 2 years, and billions in extra costs. At one point, the wiring issue even forced Airbus's CEO to step down. Talk about an expensive mistake. But when it comes to the plane's mechanics, there really is no comparison. It has a total of 4 engines powering its body, roughly equivalent to the propulsive power of around 2,500 cars. If that doesn't seem to make you go, wow, get seated. If you think the A380 is just a slightly larger specimen when it comes to size, you'd have to think again. It really wouldn't be an exaggeration to compare its 79-foot height to being as tall as a 7-story building. The A380 boasts a wingspan of 260 feet. Yes, it's kind of like a giant's definition of a plane. But here's where it gets tricky. Remember the catch we mentioned earlier? Unfortunately, the A380 lost its popularity with most airlines due to its operating costs. That sounds quite counterintuitive, but when you consider how most of the world has strayed far away from the hub-to-hub transport method that the A380 was created for, it makes complete sense. It's an issue because realistically, how often will you have such an enormous number of passengers flying to one spot? It's simply not feasible. And as long as the airplane isn't full, it really isn't more efficient than other much smaller aircraft like the A350. Qatar Airways CEO even claimed that their biggest mistake was buying them. That said, it's not the only reason this aircraft has fallen out of grace with its owners, with the CEO also mentioning the CO2 emissions and citing it as too harmful for the environment. However, one thing is for sure. It stands as a visual reminder of the engineering marvels humans can achieve. So there it is, the Airbus A380, the super jumbo aircraft that needed its own ships, barges, and even redesigned roads. You may love it or hate it, but you can't argue that nothing else flew quite like it. Let us know in the comments which machine you want to see taken apart piece by piece next time. And, as always, thank you for watching Whole Process.